Every October, we love being scared. We tell ghost stories on dark nights huddled around a campfire. We go to haunted houses where hidden monsters leap out to attack us. On Halloween, even quiet suburbs are transformed into striking displays of horror. But how old is Halloween? Why do people wear costumes to look like skeletons and ghosts? Why do they bob for apples or go trick-or-treating? The origins of Halloween intrigue historians, anthropologists, and even astronomers. After all, it is an astronomical holiday. To understand how astronomical events have influenced Halloween, and to learn about the beginnings of the traditions we celebrate today, let's travel to the lands where Halloween originated. It is here in what is now Ireland, Scotland, and Wales that the customs we now associate with Halloween began. Let's take a look at the people that thrived in this region over 2,000 years ago, the Celts. The Celts were tribal peoples who were related primarily by their languages. Their territories during the first millennium BCE stretched across Europe to the north of the classical world, from Ireland in the west through Iberia and France, across Switzerland and Austria, to Turkey in the east. These territories can often be identified by place names containing Gaul: Galicia in northwestern Spain, Gaul in France, Galicia in Poland and the Ukraine, and the land of the Galatians mentioned in the New Testament around Ankara in Turkey. What were the Celtic people like, and what was important to them? We can learn a lot about their beliefs and traditions because they are reflected in mythology and folklore. Irish lore tells us that the Celts held 4 major festivals throughout the year. Of these 4, the most frequently mentioned in myths was the one held on or around October 31st, when we now celebrate Halloween. But the Celts didn't call this celebration Halloween. Instead, they called it Samhain. Today, we will learn that Halloween has been shaped by many Samhain festivities. In fact, the word Samhainophobia is now used to describe someone who has an intense fear of Halloween. Although influenced by Samhain, Halloween directly stems from the comparatively recent holiday, All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day. This Roman Catholic holy day, held on November 1st, was created to remember and honor all the saints, whether they are known or unknown. The night before All Hallows' Day, All Hallows' Eve, became known as All Hallows' Evening, which eventually was shortened to Halloween. Both celebrations, Samhain and All Hallows' Eve, were held around the same time of the year. However, these weren't the only festivals that were held during this time around the world. In India, we find 2 Hindu celebrations that suggest Samhain itself has roots even further back in time, as there are similarities between them. The most prominent Hindu festival, Diwali, is celebrated during the new moon phase that is closest to the beginning of November. During this festival, lamps and candles decorate homes and sweets are shared with friends and neighbors, reminiscent of Halloween jack-o'-lanterns and treats. In South India and neighboring countries, there is another festival. It's called Diwali, the Firewalking festival, where people walk barefoot across hot embers to honor an important character in the Hindu epic Mahabharata. She proved her purity by walking across a similar bed of fire. Why was this time of the year significant to so many different cultures? How is it that civilizations that appeared to be isolated from one another shared such a deep appreciation for this time? Let's take a closer look at Samhain and find out. The Celts were a community supported by agriculture. They were farmers. By being one of the 4 main festivals on their calendar, Samhain helped to divide the agricultural year into seasons. So, in addition to being a festival, Samhain was also the beginning of winter. Actually, the word Samhain means summer's end. Crops and hay were brought in from the fields and stored for winter, and herds and flocks were brought back from summer pastures. Samhain marked the end of a harvest and was a time of feasting. Today, we still divide the year into seasons. This is done by splitting it into quarters using the shortest and longest days of the year, the solstices, as well as the dates midway between, the equinoxes. However, prior to the 18th century, and to many people in Europe today, the seasons did not start on the solstices and equinoxes, but midway between, on what are called cross-quarter days. We see that this is the case in Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. For Shakespeare, the summer solstice, when the sun rises and sets farthest to the north, was not the beginning of summer, but the middle. So then for them, the winter solstice, when the sun rises and sets farthest south, was the middle of winter. And the dates midway between, the equinoxes, were the middle of spring and of autumn. It was the dates in between those cross-quarter days that were the true beginnings of the seasons. The changes we see in the sun's path across the sky and the resulting change in weather are a direct result of the Earth's tilt. For the northern hemisphere, as the Earth orbits the sun throughout the year, it will tilt towards the sun on the summer solstice, away from the sun on the winter solstice, and will tilt neither towards nor away from the sun on the equinoxes. When the Earth is directly in between one of these 4 locations, it would be a cross-quarter day. Samhain was one of these cross-quarter days, truly making it an astronomical event. But the exact day it was celebrated on would have moved from year to year. It was most likely based on the phase of the moon, as this was an easy way of measuring the passing of time, since one cycle of the moon is roughly 1 month long. After the introduction of Christianity into Ireland, sometime before the 5th century CE, the Roman calendar was widely adopted, and all the cross-quarter celebrations were moved to the beginning of the nearest month. In the case of Samhain, this meant the 1st of November. However, in Celtic society, the days were counted from sunset, so Samhain would have started at sundown on October 31st, Halloween. The fact that Samhain was chosen to take place on a cross-quarter day wasn't a coincidence. To the Celts, this time between the seasons was unique, and their traditions reflect this. They believed that it was a seam in the year, when the barrier between our world and the other world was weakened. At this time, the dead who were confined to this realm could return to the land of the living. It was a night of magic, games, and costumes. These costumes would have differed slightly to those we see today. Some say because of a belief that not only the spirits of the dead returned on this night, but also other spirits like the old gods, fairies, and animal spirits looking for souls to carry back with them to the other world. If you pretended to be one of the roaming spirits by dressing up like a ghost or an animal, they would let you walk by unharmed. They might even be frightened of you. Another way they tried to ward off evil spirits was to carve faces in large hollowed-out turnips, which we still continue to do today, turning pumpkins into jack-o'-lanterns. The other world also contained past loved ones, so people would set out food by their fireplaces so ancestors would feel welcome. People would also leave food on their doorsteps to try and appease evil spirits. These practices would eventually become trick-or-treating. This time of the year didn't just offer a view into the other world. It also opened a window to the future. Samhain also marked the end of their year, and the people were eager to know what the new year had in store for them. Some of our traditional Halloween games, like bobbing for apples, originated with this desire to predict the new year yet to come. Those lucky enough to get an apple, or in some versions a coin at the bottom of the tub of water, could look forward to a prosperous year. Today in Ireland, around Samhain, you can buy a type of large fruit cake called barmbrack. Baked into the cake could be a stick, a coin, a button, a thimble, a piece of cloth, or a ring. What you get in your piece makes a prediction about your future. If you found the ring, you can expect to be married within the next year. Find the coin and you will receive wealth, but find the piece of cloth and you will live in poverty. You can find recipes for barmbrack online to bake this Halloween. Like many other festivals celebrated on this cross-quarter day, Samhain involved the building of bonfires, literally bonefires. Bones of farm animals that wouldn't make it through the winter, particularly horses, would be collected to burn. The tradition of Samhain bonfires still lives on to this day, as they can be seen lighting up the Irish countryside. We learned through myths that Celtic beliefs revolved around the repeating cycles of the year. So how did they predict these cycles? How did they know when it was time to celebrate Samhain? Their calendars were not always accurate, and the weather was too unpredictable. So, like many other cultures, they looked to the sky. Remember that the path of the sun across the sky is dependent on the time of the year. The Celts and other civilizations noticed these cycles. They built monuments that were aligned with solar motions, stone circles. One of the most popular stone circles, Stonehenge, was built around 5,000 years ago, making it older than all the pyramids in Egypt. By comparing the location of the sun on the horizon to the strategically placed stones, one could tell whether it was a solstice, an equinox, one of the cross-quarter days, or one of many other celestial events. But some may have known that it was time to celebrate Samhain for a different reason. Instead of recognizing the sun's location, they may have looked at the stars. In particular, they quite possibly looked for a small grouping of stars called the Pleiades near the constellation of Orion the Hunter. Find Orion and you can easily find the Pleiades. Look for him in the eastern sky on Halloween, right above the horizon, where the sky meets the ground. He looks like a stick figure, with 2 stars that make up his shoulders, 3 stars that make up his belt, and 2 for his feet or knees. To find the Pleiades, use Orion's belt. Connect these 3 stars with an imaginary line and follow them away from the ground until you reach a tiny cluster of stars, the Pleiades. It is said that the Celts knew to celebrate on the night that the Pleiades climbed to its highest point in the sky at midnight, like it is here. But perhaps they looked for it rising in the east, just as the sun would be setting in the west. In either case, both of these sightings of the Pleiades just so happened to be around the same date as the cross-quarter day. If they saw the Pleiades in these locations, they knew it was time for the harvest. It was time for Samhain. Today, Halloween is fixed on October 31st, even though now the Pleiades cluster doesn't peak at midnight until November 21st. This change is due to the fact that the Earth wobbles very slowly over the course of thousands of years in a process called precession. This makes celestial objects appear in a different location than they once did. The Celts may have associated the Pleiades cluster with sorrow and mourning, as it looks like teardrops in the sky. When observing the cluster, the Celts could maybe only see 7 bright stars, which is why the Greeks named it the Seven Sisters. But take a look at it with a pair of binoculars and you'll realize it is more than just 7 stars. And with a really good telescope, you can see that it is actually a cluster of over 1,000 stars. They all stay in a group, bounded by gravity, as they travel together through the Milky Way galaxy. They shine blue because they are extremely hot stars. On their surface, temperatures can reach 13,000 Kelvin or 23,000 degrees Fahrenheit, over twice the temperature of the surface of the Sun. Little did the Celts know that right by the Pleiades there exists an eerie object in space. It's right by the star Rigel in Orion, another blue star in our galaxy. This region contains a cloud of gas and dust, a nebula. It reminds people of a character we now associate with Halloween. It's called the Witch Head Nebula because it looks like a witch's head. Don't see it? Here's her eye, her nose, lips, pointed chin, maybe a big wart on the chin, and a pointed hat. Astronomers call it a reflection nebula because it reflects Rigel's starlight to Earth and we see it shine blue. This isn't merely because of the star's blue color. This nebula has dust grains in it that reflect blue light more efficiently than red light. This is similar to how our daytime sky appears blue. Although for our blue sky, it is the molecules in our atmosphere that scatter blue light, not dust like the nebula. On your Halloween night, try and spot a simple shape in the stars, the Great Square of Pegasus, which makes up the body of the constellation Pegasus the Flying Horse. However, he's only half of an upside-down horse because on the other side is the Princess Andromeda. Her parents are up there too. Queen Cassiopeia, a handful of stars in the north that look like a W, and King Cepheus, a house-shaped group of stars. In King Cepheus is another eerie nebula, the Ghost Nebula. It's called this because ghosts appear to be rising out of the cloud of gas, seemingly haunting nearby space as it spans over 2 light-years across. This nebula is lit by stars that are just starting to take shape and may form new clusters of stars similar to the Pleiades. The effects of this complex star formation give the Ghost Nebula its shape. There are other spooky nebulae in space. Some we can't observe from here in the northern hemisphere, like the Black Widow Nebula. In the middle region of the spider, there are these yellow specks, baby stars. During formation, the stars give off solar winds, streams of charged particles that blow the surrounding gas out, forming bubbles or cavities. 2 cavities were formed on either side of the new stars, giving this nebula its spider-like shape. Who knows what kind of beliefs and stories the Celts would have had if they saw the extraordinary things we see in space today. Beyond the greatest myths and folklore lies a different story, an astronomical one that gives us a new understanding and sheds light on the night sky. We see that there is more to it than the cycles of the year and the changing seasons, and we are discovering more each day. We know people have been celebrating Samhain, or some version of it, for thousands of years. We don't know exactly how old it is, but there is good reason to believe that it even predates the Celts. The presence of similar festivals suggests that it is a tradition with very deep roots. And the fact that we continue to celebrate it today shows it has a broad appeal, well beyond the ancient beliefs that gave rise to it. For the Celts, Samhain was a mystical time when the border between realities was thin. Today, Halloween still holds a mystical lure, where we can become someone or something else, even for just one night. Because on Halloween, we can celebrate what we are passionate about, no matter the theme. So this year, when you're picking out your costume, or when you're deciding what to carve in your pumpkin, try to remember the special role that astronomy and the Celts play in this holiday. And take some time during your Halloween night of trick-or-treating to look up at the night sky. You'll be looking at the same stars your ancient ancestors saw when they celebrated Samhain many centuries ago.